Or are you going to admit that you're just another unqualified maid who will never leave the place where she was born? The phrase cut through the air like a blade. Mr. Lee, who understood more Portuguese than he let on, felt his blood boil. In Chinese culture, publicly disrespecting someone, especially an older person, was one of the greatest offenses possible. Elena lowered her eyes, but not out of shame. It was the same strategy she had used for decades to survive in hostile environments, to make herself small so the predators would lose interest. I'm sorry, Mr. Marcus. You're right. Of course, I'm right. Marcus was elated now, feeling like the center of attention. That's the difference between us and you. We prepare ourselves. We study. We get qualified. You just wait for opportunities to fall from the sky. Maya clenched her fists. Every word was a personal affront, not only to her mother, but to everyone who worked through the night to study, who woke up before sunrise to turn impossible dreams into reality. Marcus had no idea that he was talking to one of those people. James, realizing that the situation was becoming too awkward, even by his standards, tried to intervene. Marcus, I think that's enough. Let's focus on business. Business? Marcus laughed loudly. What business, James? Our interpreter has abandoned us. Our client is clearly angry. And you want to do business? The only person in this room who at least tried to communicate with him was your maid. And look what happened. Mr. Lee had reached the limit of his patience. He stood up abruptly from his chair and spoke in Mandarin for almost 2 minutes, his voice laden with indignation and disappointment. He gestured toward Marcus, then pointed at Elena, clearly expressing his outrage at the situation. There you go, Marcus shouted as if he had just proven his point. He's obviously furious at our lack of professionalism. Congratulations. James, you just lost the biggest contract of your career by trusting amateurs. But Maya from the hallway had understood every word Mr. Lee said. The businessman wasn't just angry about the lack of an interpreter. He was genuinely shocked by Marcus's disrespect, comparing him to small men who build their egos by stepping on others, and saying he would never do business with people who treat employees like objects of amusement. Mr. Lee had also mentioned that he grew up poor in Shanghai, that his own mother worked as a maid to pay for his education, and that he recognized in Elena the same quiet dignity that his mother maintained in the face of adversity. Finally, he had said something that made Maya's heart race, that he would cancel all business with that company unless someone there showed the slightest bit of respect and professional competence in the next 5 minutes. 5 minutes. That was all Maya had. She took a deep breath, adjusted her university backpack, and took a determined step toward the door. 7 years of humiliation, 3 years of secret preparation, and now 5 minutes to change her mother's life forever. What Marcus Thorne didn't know was that he had underestimated not only Elena, but an entire family that turned obstacles into steps on a ladder that would take them much higher than those men in suits could ever imagine. Every insult had been fuel, every laugh, motivation, and now it was time to cash in. Maya adjusted her university backpack and took a deep breath. 5 minutes. That was all Mr. Lee had given that company before definitively cancelling the multi-million-dollar contract. 5 minutes that would determine not only the future of Anderson Enterprises, but also where the years of secret preparation would finally bear fruit. She had spent the last 3 years not only studying Mandarin, but also immersing herself in Chinese business culture, negotiation protocols, and the cultural nuances that made the difference between a successful deal and a total failure. Every morning, she woke up at 4 a.m. to study before work at the bakery. Every weekend she spent at the university library devouring articles on the Asian market. She saved every penny to buy books on international business. What motivated her was not only the dream of a better life, but the painful memory of every humiliation her mother had suffered in that house. Like when Chloe, James's teenage daughter, had deliberately thrown orange juice on the clean floor and said, "Oops, your mother. We'll have to clean it again," or when Marcus had commented in front of Elena, "At least she knows her place. She doesn't dream of impossible things." Each cruel comment had fueled the plan. that Maya was meticulously constructing. She knew that one day she would have the opportunity to show that competence and intelligence had no color, social class, or surname. And that day had come sooner than she expected. From the hallway, she heard Marcus intensify the humiliation. You know, James, I think we should hire more maids like Elena. At least they know they shouldn't have dreams above their station. They don't think they're capable of things they weren't born to do. Mr. Lee spoke again in Mandarin, his voice laden with growing indignation. This man is a disgrace to any serious company. How can I entrust my investments to people who treat employees as objects of amusement? He said in Mandarin, gesturing impatiently. Maya knew she needed a strategic entrance. She couldn't just burst into the room like a desperate student. She needed instant credibility. That's when she noticed something that changed everything. On the side table near the door was Mr. Lee's document folder open, displaying contracts in traditional and simplified Mandarin. She approached discreetly and quickly photographed 2 pages with her cell phone. In seconds, she had formulated a perfect strategy. She knocked gently on the conference room door. "Excuse me," she said, entering with a professional demeanor. "I'm Maya Silva from UCLA's International Relations Consulting Firm. I'm here to solve the communication problem you're facing." The entire room turned to look at her. Marcus frowned, confused. James blinked several times, trying to process the information. Elena's eyes widened, recognizing her own daughter, but not understanding what was happening. "Excuse me, but who called you?" Marcus asked, his voice laden with disdain. And more importantly, who said, "We need consulting from AA." From a young black woman. Maya finished with a serene smile. "Interesting that this is your first concern, Mr. Marcus. But let me explain why I am here." She addressed Mr. Lee directly and said in perfect Mandarin, "Mr. Lee, I apologize for the disrespectful environment you are facing. I have come to offer my professional translation services so that we can resolve the situation appropriately." Mr. Lee stood up immediately, his eyes lighting up with relief and surprise. "Finally, someone who speaks my language correctly," he replied in Mandarin. "Where are you from? Your pronunciation is exceptional." "I'm from Los Angeles, Mr. Lee, but I've studied Mandarin intensively over the past few years, specializing in Sino-American business negotiations." Maya replied in fluent Mandarin. Marcus was speechless. James tried to understand how a young black woman had appeared out of nowhere, speaking fluent Chinese, and Elena watched her daughter with a mixture of pride and concern, fearing that Maya might lose everything by exposing herself in this way. "Wait a moment," Marcus stood up, pointing at Maya. "Aren't you the maid's daughter? What the hell is going on here?" Mr. Lee, who had understood the question in English, looked from Maya to Elena, then back to Maya. "Is this your mother?" he asked in Mandarin. "Yes, Mr. Lee. And that's exactly why I'm here. I heard the words you said earlier about respect, dignity, and professionalism. I came to offer the bridge of communication that this company clearly needs." Mr. Lee smiled for the first time since he had entered that mansion. "Interesting. Very interesting. And tell me, young lady, did you hear everything I said earlier?" "Every word, Mr. Lee. And I can assure you that you'll be satisfied with the solution I propose." That's when Marcus exploded. "This is ridiculous. You can't just show up here and interrupt our business. You're a maid's daughter, not an international consultant." Maya turned to him with that dangerous serenity she had been perfecting for years. "Mr. Marcus, you made a bet a few minutes ago. You said you would give your job to whoever could translate what Mr. Lee said. I'm here to accept that bet. But you're not the maid. The bet was with your mother." "The bet," Maya said, taking her cell phone out of her pocket and showing a recording, "was exactly this. If anyone can translate what our Chinese friend said, I'll give up my job. Your own words, Mr. Marcus, and I have witnesses."
Mr. Lee watched everything with growing interest. Not only did this young woman speak his language perfectly, but she also displayed an impressive strategic intelligence. James Anderson, realizing that the situation had completely spiraled out of his control, tried to intervene. "Maya, right? Maybe we can talk about this in private. There is nothing to discuss in private, Mr. Anderson. Maya replied firmly. A bet was made publicly. Mr. Lee was publicly disrespected, and my mother was publicly humiliated. The resolution will also be public. Marcus was red with anger. This is absurd. You are a student. You can't just— I can't what? Mr. Marcus, I can't be competent. I can't speak languages. I can't have ambitions beyond those you deem appropriate for my color and social class. The room was completely silent. Mr. Lee watched every word, every gesture, seeing exactly the kind of intelligence and dignity he respected in the business world. That's when something unexpected happened. From a folder that Maya had discreetly observed, she took out a sheet of paper and showed it to Mr. Lee. Mr. Lee, I believe there is an error in the investment calculations on page 23 of your contract. The figures in yuan do not exactly match the conversion to dollars presented. Mr. Lee took the document, examined it quickly, and his eyes widened. You're right. How did you see that? Because I studied not only your language, Mr. Lee, but also your market. I know that details like this may seem small, but for Chinese business people, accuracy is fundamental. At that moment, everyone in the room realized that they were no longer dealing with a simple student taking advantage of an opportunity. They were dealing with someone who had meticulously prepared for this moment, someone who had turned years of humiliation into fuel for impressive competence. Marcus felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. James Anderson realized that everything was changing rapidly, and Elena, for the first time in 7 years in that house, felt a pride that warmed her chest like fire. But what none of them knew yet was that Maya had saved the best revelation for last. What she was about to show would not only save the contract, but completely rewrite the rules of that game. Every second of preparation, every early morning of study, every silent humiliation had been a step building the staircase to this exact moment where underestimation would become the greatest weapon against those who believe that power comes from birth, not merit. Maya took a deep breath and looked directly at Mr. Lee. Mr. Lee, you said exactly this 15 minutes ago. And then in perfect Mandarin, she began to translate word for word everything the businessman had said. You said you were deeply disappointed with the lack of professionalism at this company, that you expected to find serious partners, but instead found an environment where employees are publicly humiliated for the entertainment of incompetent executives.
Marcus felt the blood freeze in his veins. Mr. Lee nodded vigorously, confirming every word. Maya continued relentlessly. You mentioned that you grew up poor in Shanghai, that your mother worked as a maid to pay for your education, and that you would never do business with people who treat workers as objects of amusement. James Anderson was pale. Each revelation was a bomb exploding within his plans for international expansion. But the most important part, Maya continued, was when you said you would cancel all business with this company unless someone demonstrated real competence. In the next 5 minutes. And that 5 minutes ended exactly 2 minutes ago. The room was deathly silent. Marcus desperately tried to intervene. That's impossible. She can't what? Mr. Lee stood up, speaking in slow but firm English. She translated everything perfectly. Every word. How do you explain that, Mr. Marcus? That's when Maya took her cell phone out of her pocket. Mr. Lee, may I show you something that I believe will be of interest to you? She showed him the screen. It was a simultaneous translation app that she had developed as her final university project, specifically for Sino-American negotiations. Mr. Lee's eyes widened. You created this? Yes, sir. It's my final project for my degree in international relations. The app identifies not only words but also cultural nuances and specific negotiation protocols between Chinese and American companies. Marcus was falling apart. James, you can't seriously be considering. Considering what, Marcus? James turned to him with a restrained fury he had never shown before. Considering that a 22-year-old woman saved a contract that you almost completely destroyed. Considering that she demonstrated more competence in 10 minutes than you have in 8 years. Mr. Lee took Maya's cell phone and examined the app. How many people have access to this? For now, only me, Mr. Lee. But I can license it to companies that truly value intercultural communication. And how much do you want for an exclusive license? Maya smiled. It depends on the package, Mr. Lee. Exclusive license for your business group. $500,000. Personal consulting for expansion into the American market. Another $300,000 per year. And if you include cultural protocol management. For all your investments in the Americas. She paused deliberately. $1 million annually. The entire room was speechless. Mr. Lee smiled for the first time since entering that mansion. It's a deal. Marcus slumped into his chair as if he had been punched. $1 million. She's asking for $1 million. And I'm paying, Mr. Lee replied dryly. Because real competence is worth every penny. He turned to James. Mr. Anderson, I have a proposal. Keep the original contract with one condition. This young lady will be my official representative in all dealings with your company. James looked at Maya, then at Marcus, who was sweating as if he were in a sauna. What about the position that was promised? About that.
Maya opened the folder she had brought with her. I have here the complete recording of the bet made by Mr. Marcus. She pressed play on her cell phone. Marcus's voice echoed through the room. If anyone can translate what our Chinese friend said, I'll give up my position. I bet she understands everything Mr. Lee said. Your own words, Mr. Marcus, Maya said calmly. Witnessed by everyone in this room. Marcus exploded. This is ridiculous. You can't just record a private conversation. Private? Maya raised an eyebrow. A business meeting at a company with multiple witnesses. Mr. Marcus, perhaps you should review your basic legal concepts. Mr. Lee watched everything with growing admiration. Not only did this young woman speak his language and understand his culture, but she also demonstrated impressive strategic intelligence. James, Mr. Lee said firmly, I only do business with people of integrity. This man, he pointed to Marcus, lied about having an interpreter, disrespected employees in my presence, and now tries to rag on a publicly made promise. How can I entrust my company to an organization that tolerates this? James Anderson was at a crossroads. Losing Mr. Lee meant losing $200 million in future contracts. Keeping Marcus meant losing credibility with the most important partner in the company's history. Marcus, James said slowly. You're fired. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus staggered. James, you can't. 8 years working together. I built half of this company's contracts. You almost destroyed the biggest contract in our history. James replied coldly. And worse, you did it by humiliating an employee in front of an international client. Elena, who had watched everything in silence, finally spoke up. Mr. James, I can't accept Mr. Marcus's position. I'm not qualified for it. Maya turned to her mother with a proud smile. Mom, who said the position would be yours? She looked at James. The bet was that if someone translated, that person would get the position. I translated. The position is mine. Mr. Lee clapped slowly. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Marcus was red with anger and despair. You can't do that. I have rights. I have a contract. Had James corrected. As for your rights, consult your lawyer. I'm sure he'll explain how public verbal bets can have legal consequences. Maya walked over to Marcus and held out her hand. Mr. Marcus, your office keys, please, and your access card. Marcus stared at that outstretched hand as if it were a poisonous snake. The humiliation was complete. The maid's daughter had destroyed his career, his reputation, and his arrogance in a single masterful move. This isn't over, he muttered, handing over the keys with trembling hands. For you, it's over, Maya replied calmly. For me, it's just beginning. Mr. Lee approached her. I have a question. How did you know I would be here today? Maya smiled. I didn't know Mr. Lee, but I've been preparing for any opportunity that might arise for 3 years. Mr. Million-dollar deals with a company where he had worked for 8 years, but now mediated by the young woman he had completely underestimated. Alone in the hallway, Marcus finally understood the lesson that had cost him his career. Never underestimate someone who is hungrier for success than you, assured of your superiority. But was this really Maya's last card? Or were there even more surprises in store for those who thought they knew the full extent of her intelligence? 6 months later, Maya was in her office on the 20th floor, now as Vice President of International Relations at Anderson Enterprises. Her first decision as an executive had been to hire Elena as quality supervisor, with a salary 3 times higher than that of an employee. Mr. Lee became not only a business partner, but also a personal mentor. Maya's app had already been licensed to 15 multinational companies, generating an annual income of $3 million. She used part of the money to open a free language school in underprivileged communities. Competence has no color, age, or surname, she said in her corporate lectures. It only has results. Marcus, on the other hand, was facing his new reality. Fired without a letter of recommendation, he struggled to find work. His arrogance had become an urban legend in the Los Angeles executive market. Business people shared the story as an example of how prejudice can destroy careers. One Thursday afternoon, he showed up at Anderson Enterprises waiting in the reception area. Maya came down personally to greet him. "I came to ask for an opportunity," he said, eyes downcast. "Anything. I've learned my lesson." Maya looked at him for a moment. "Marcus, I've learned that second chances are earned, not asked for. When you prove that you've really changed, maybe the market will give you a new opportunity, but that's not up to me." He left with his head down, carrying the bitterness of someone who finally understood that humiliating others is the quickest way to humiliate yourself. Elena, now respected and valued, smiled as she watched her daughter transform not only their own lives, but also positively influence dozens of young people who attended the language school. "Mom," Maya said one Sunday night, "thank you for teaching me that dignity is not negotiable, even when the world tries to convince us otherwise." The best revenge was not to destroy Marcus, but to build something greater than he could ever imagine. Maya proved that when competence meets opportunity, neither prejudice nor arrogance can stand in the way of success. In the end, Marcus tried to humiliate a family, but ended up humiliating only himself. Maya and Elena learned that true victory is not about putting down those who have hurt us, but about rising so high that they become irrelevant. If this story touched you, subscribe to the channel and share in the comments. Do you believe that merit always wins over prejudice? Your experiences can inspire others to never give up on their dreams.